Cool. Okay, so welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. So today's webinar is My Signage Portal, Touchscreen CMS, Create Captivating Content. My name is Thomas Fraser-Bacon. I'm the Marketing Director here at Allsea. I'm joined today by my colleague, Dean Hancox. He's our lead CMS Support Advisor. For those of you who attended back in May, we actually hosted a webinar to go over the full CMS, showing off the new user interface. So we purposely excluded the Touch CMS from that at the time, so that we could give a more separate and advanced session, which is what today's session is. So just to make everyone aware of what we'll be doing today. So again, I'm not going to spend too long on this because we covered this on the last webinar, but just very quickly. So for those of you who aren't that familiar with our system, our kind of all-in-one approach kind of comprises all three typical elements from a digital signage project. So for the purposes of today's webinar, 24/7 commercial grade touchscreen, an Android media player and a content management system, all from one source, which means that our solutions are easier to promote, easier to install, easier to maintain, easier to use, easier to support, a host of advantages. I'm sure most of you are familiar with that approach now anyway, so I don't need to spend too long on that. So again, this was all covered in May's webinar, but just to very quickly go through what we've done since we launched the new user interface back in July of last year. The first feature that we added was branding customization. So you or your customers can have their own logo and their own colors to customize the CMS interface. We also worked on improving the synchronization so that the perceived lag time is now less than 0.042 seconds to create that nice video wall effect that you can see on the screens behind me just here, which are actually connected on Wi-Fi. We also added a playback log for projects, specifically for projects that have advertising applications to obviously proof of play. We had added some advanced remote control functions. So as well as being able to stop, reboot, format, change volumes, switch inputs, we added some more advanced functions like changing the orientation, updating the time and date, changing the synchronization settings, etc. Something that's relevant to today's webinar is obviously the touchscreen analytics. So this was obviously so that each button zone can be registered as a command. Those logs can be exported. We'll go into a little bit more detail about that in just a minute anyway. Just before the last CMS webinar back in May, we launched the new My Signage Portal website as well, so that raise the profile of the whole platform. Really, we changed the logo or the branding. I'm sure that most of you will agree it does kind of raise the profile of the product itself. And then most recently, just last week, we added the ability to support 4K content. So it was actually brought up in our last webinar. One of the questions that was asked was when are you going to be able to support 4K content? So currently our UHD3 range, our range of 4K commercial displays, can support 4K content, images and videos deployed through the CMS, as well as plug and play. So if your customer requests a 4K solution as one screen rather than a video wall, for example, we've now got a solution that meets that requirement. A few of the upcoming features that we have in development. A YouTube zone. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about with these because we did cover them last time. The API for third-party hardware integration, email subscription reminders, and other optimization work. And I guess the main point here is if there's anything that you're kind of getting requested a lot or that you think is really going to improve the functionality of the CMS, please get in touch with myself, one of the technical support team, or your account manager to discuss that, and we can certainly add that to the roadmap. We're very much dependent on your feedback to help us to continue to improve our product, which will hopefully help you and your customers as well, guys. Okay, so what I want to focus now is what are the advantages of using My Signage Portal for touchscreens specifically. So like our CMS in general, very simple and user. The main thing here is that no coding is required to create this touchscreen content, to create this interactive content. So whether you as our partners are creating the content for your customers, or whether your customers are creating the content for themselves, very user-friendly, very easy to use, very time efficient, very cost-effective. many other platforms on the market are extremely expensive when it comes to creating interactive content and can be, again, very complex. Also, the fact that it's a fully integrated system and we have a wide range of different, interactive displays, freestanding and wall mounted and outdoor, and everything that you could look for really. If a third-party touchscreen is being used, obviously our media player can be used, our external media player. If you do encounter a project like that, please again get in touch with us. We can perform some compatibility testing and help you out with that. That's not a problem. Also, flexibility. Obviously, as well as images and videos, you can integrate web pages, Android applications. Sometimes our touch CMS is sometimes just used as a front page. If someone has a website they want to display, because that way you can, or even a third-party app, you can then kind of still make use and take advantage of all the advantages of the CMS, such as monitoring, remote commands, update control, etc. You've still got that remote access and that monitoring ability. So I mentioned earlier about touchscreen logs. So you can track basically how a user interacts with the touch playlist. So each time a particular button is touched on a playlist, a record can be kept, though, then be exported as well. So that is a very advanced function, obviously, for some projects that specify that. Another kind of feature that doesn't really get kind of spoken about that much is the ability by USB. So if a network goes down, for example, the touchscreens can still be updated via USB by packaging the content from the portal. Just keep in mind that a non-touch playlist does need to be included, but it doesn't necessarily need to be included as a screensaver that launches every 10 minutes or whatever. Again, that's going to probably make more sense later on after the demo. So now we get on to, why are we hosting this webinar today? So one of the most common questions we get asked is, okay, I've learned how to use the Touch CMS. I've watched the video tutorial. I've put some basic content together. But how can I get the most out of it? How can I really create dynamic and captivating content? So that's really what we're going to be focused on today. I think for those of you who don't have that knowledge, my advice would be watch the basic video tutorial. By all means, obviously, continue to attend the webinar, but then everything's going to make a lot more sense if you've got that kind of basic understanding as well. So that would be my advice, which is just here. This obviously, as always, the recording and the PowerPoint presentation will be distributed to everybody who's attending today. So before we actually get into the actual demonstration itself of the Touch CMS, there's just a few points that I wanted to cover, mainly just tips really. So from my experience, if the person designing the artwork for the content understands the functions and limitations of the CMS, that's when you're going to get the best results. So if you're getting a third party involved, or even if you're creating the content yourself, my advice would be, like I say, watch the basic video tutorial, watch this webinar, and then go crazy. That's really when you're going to start being able to create that dynamic content. Also, identify the purposes of your touch content. I think it seems quite obvious, but it can be, often overlooked. It's important to do that first of all. What do you want to achieve with this interactive playlist? Also, consider the screen size. So, for example, if you've got a smaller screen, then you're going to have bigger buttons and less of them. If you've got a bigger screen, then obviously you can have loads more buttons and, having smaller buttons as well. The best way of doing this is obviously to have a demo screen of the same size that you can kind of, live publish to and test in that way. Also, again, seems quite obvious, but also to create a workflow for how all the different pages are going to be linked together. I think, even if it's just a sketch, it can really help when it comes to navigation and, how you're linking this page to that page and so forth, especially with more complex touch playlists. Also consider user behavior. So based on existing or popular user interfaces or user experiences, for example, having an X in the top right-hand corner, that's really the kind of user behavior that I'm talking about. So what I'm going to do just for a second, guys. So if you want to switch to speaker view, in the top right-hand corner, you should have a speaker view option. what I'm going to do first, I'm actually going to go kind of backwards and back to front. I'm going to start by showing you the content that we've created, first of all. So what we're seeing here is a screensaver playlist. Again, how we build all this, we'll cover later on. I just want to show you kind of the finished result first. So if I touch that, it's then going to take me to the home screen. On the home screen here, we've got 3 buttons that do different things. I'm going to go into this part here, Discover. Most of these buttons don't actually do anything, but on this one here, for example, it's then going to launch another window. Just going to, yeah, it's a little bit difficult to see. On the testing, it was a little bit better than this. Apologies, guys, about that. There's a few buttons here. I think when we show you the back end, it's going to obviously make a lot more sense. This button here launches one video. So you can have almost like a video gallery. A different button here launches a separate video. So you can have as many different buttons, launch as many different videos as you like. You can also have an integrated gallery. So here at the bottom, you've got all these different thumbnails that kind of display different images here. And then here you've also got the option to launch a website. So there's a few different ways of launching websites within the Touch playlist. One is to integrate it as a web zone here like this. And if I go back now, go back, exit from that, go home. If I click on this one here, it's also going to launch a full screen web page. So it's not integrated as a web, launching a full screen web page. Again, we'll show you how to achieve all this in just a minute. Another cool option that you've got here is try our app. So I mentioned you can incorporate third applications, obviously Android applications, whether it's a game or one that your customer's got that's their own app. The one that we've set up here is just a game, just Tetris, just for demo purposes, obviously. So obviously, if the screen's in a waiting room or something like that, obviously you want it to display information, but maybe you want it, you want to have like the option to play a game just to kind of kill time to provide a little bit of entertainment for users as well. You can see this a little bit better on the screen, it looks like. So just to give you an idea of, it's been a few decades since I've played Tetris. He
claims he's an expert, but he's not.
Yeah, it's been a little while, guys, so I'm a little bit rusty. You'll have to forgive me. But yeah, just to show you that, really. Obviously, I've exited that. It's gone back to the home screen. So that kind of quickly demonstrates what's possible. What I want to do next is quickly show you what it looks like on the back end. So we've seen what it looks like on the screen. So I'm just going to switch back to screen sharing. And then Dean, if you want to just take over and show what that looks like on the back end.
So let me just hide these so you can see a little bit better. I'll hide this here. Right. So obviously I've logged in. You're obviously all aware of this by now, how to do that. But in this particular webinar, we're just going to focus on the Touch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Touch playlist. And then what we actually have here is the Touch playlist that we've made specifically for the screen behind us. So if I just double left click this, you'll be able to see like all the different things that come with it. So for the first page, we've got like the home page that we obviously looked at with the 3 different buttons. And obviously all these 3 different buttons do certain things. So for example, if I click this one, you'll see on the right side here, it says jump to a scene and it says target discover. So essentially what that's doing is you're asking the button itself to jump to a scene and then which scene to jump to. So if we actually check out this one here, we'll see this one we've called Discover. So we just pretty much right clicked and renamed it, called it Discover. So we know that when we press this button here, it's going to go to this one. And then obviously whatever else you need to do on this page, you can kind of carry on through the playlist. For the second one, Thomas was talking about like putting websites and such onto the screen. So you can see with this particular one, we actually can change the action. Instead of jump to a scene, which was the one that's pretty much default, you can actually open a website as full screen. So you have all these different options and stuff here.
Just quickly, I think just for the purposes of this bit, James, just quickly show what each page looks like.
Yeah, that's
fine. And then later on, obviously, we're basically going to build this from scratch just to show you what it all is anyway, guys. So this is obviously what that page looks like with the different button zones.
Yeah.
And then obviously the one with the web page integrated as part of the page as a web zone, and then obviously the gallery as well. So that's what it looks like on the back end. And then before we actually start building it, what I want to do next is just quickly show you what the assets look like. So here we've got a few, basically each of these images was created as a different layer in Photoshop. This is obviously the video, which is the screensaver. Obviously that essentially the purpose of the screensaver is just to let you know that it's a touch screen basically. But if I go to, for example, the home page, here, this is a PNG. And here you can see, obviously, there's like a slight angle. When Dean's building it, obviously, it'll make a little bit more sense. But it basically just gets away from that boxy feel, just adds like a different angle to the, you know, make it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more kind of dynamic. And then we looked at the page, the Discover page. Now, here, on the edges here, we've just basically blurred the edges of the artwork to make it look like a window's popped up in the middle. And obviously added a little cross, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of creating a familiar UI or UX. And then this is the one for that we created for the web page, which was obviously just put the web zone into. Again, Dean will show you that in just a minute. So essentially, I just wanted to show you how some of the assets are actually created. As I say, you know, whoever's kind of creating your content will have, you know, familiarity with either Photoshop or something similar. So that will kind of make much more sense to those. So what I'm going to do next is actually hand over back to Dean and ask him to essentially build everything from scratch. So from the very start, how did we, you know, once we created the assets, once we created the artwork, how do we put it all together?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so essentially, as Tom was saying, we've obviously designed all this here. And I'll just kind of show you what each of these things does and how to make them happen. So I'm just going to close this off. And then what we'll do is we'll start a new one. We'll just call this, let's just call this like webinar tests, for example. I'm going to choose the orientation. So obviously in this case, it's going to be portrait, so vertical. Press OK. And the first thing it's going to ask us is if we want to set a background image or color for our actual background here on the first scene. So for the first scene, we actually don't need to set a background image because we, as Tom was saying earlier, we actually have like a transparent PNG that had like the angle. So we're actually going to use that instead. And I'll show you how we can incorporate that transparent PNG into here. So if I just choose any color, it doesn't really matter too much. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to start by choosing the video zone first. So this one. And I'm actually going to find a video. So I think it should be in this folder here. I'm going to choose this video and then I'm just going to press OK. And that's going to allow me to put that video where it needs to be. In terms of adding the actual transparency, because you'll notice on the actual demo one itself, it obviously had that corner where it's cut off here. So that's where the this button zone here comes into effect. So you can actually do two things with a button zone. So there's quite a lot of things to do with it, but the main two things are you can actually use this as a transparent area. You can also use it to be able to function and do different things around the playlist. But what we're going to do is we're not actually going to add any action to this. We're just going to leave it as standard because we don't need it to do anything. All we need is to use that transparent PNG. So if you scroll down here, you'll see every single button actually enables you to add a button image. So if I choose this, and then if I find that PNG, which is this one here, I'll actually use this as the background instead. So you can see how at the moment, I've obviously squashed it to there, but you can see how where the white area is or where the no color is, I suppose, it actually is transparent with the video itself. So even though this video is playing here in the background, the button that doesn't actually have any function is essentially just playing, is over the top of it anyway, but the video will still play behind it. Just like, this area is just not really that visible. So what I'll do as well is if we add another button, and as we were talking about earlier, all these different buttons actually have their own unique things that they do. And these ones are active ones. So if I just quickly put these down here.
So just to quickly explain, guys, while Dean's doing that, obviously Dean's just adding these button zones and leaving them blank, essentially, just added the different areas because the buttons are part of the artwork itself. So there's two ways of adding buttons. You can have it as part of the background, which is probably the easiest way of doing it when designing the content, or what Dean will show later is how to actually add an image as part of the button as well, if you prefer to do it that way for some reason.
Yeah, we can do that now as well. So what I'll do, first of all, I'm actually going to rename the homepage, because otherwise it's going to be defaulted as scene, which is fine, right? You know, this one will be scene 1, the next one will be scene 2, scene 3, etc. But it's not really going to help you. Like if you have a very large playlist, the reference is going to get a bit screwed up. So if we just call that one homepage, let's make a second one. For this one, we're actually going to add a background image. So here I have the folder, which I believe was this one here.
Obviously, guys, if you haven't already uploaded your content, you can upload it at that point just by clicking the upload button.
Yes. So if we just say, you know, this is our background, as we were mentioning, we've already kind of done all the concept already. The only thing I do want to add is to show you that just like with the homepage here, where we can add an image to the button zone, we can do that here as well. Obviously, the purpose of this is, you know, if you do want to use an image as a button zone, you can actually use that in more ways. Instead of having to like design the backgrounds to always accommodate for the buttons, you can actually just create an image for a button, and you can just keep using that one over and over. So like maybe like with the home one here, you just make this actual like, you know, artwork here, make this a button image, and then you just kind of keep using that on every page. If you just don't know like how the actual, you know, background's going to look yet, and you don't really want to go back to like Photoshop or whatever you're using to do that. But if I just click this, I'll choose button image, just like we did before. We got the one here, so this is going to fit there nicely. And just to add to this, even though this actually looks pretty good, you can actually change the coordinates of how things look exactly. So I'm just going to do that now, because I've got that written down here.
So while Dean's doing that, one thing to add there, as well as the X and Y axis, obviously you can change the height and width. So basically meaning if you design the whole thing in Photoshop or something similar, you can create it, you can replicate it kind of pixel for pixel within the CMS quite quickly, as you've just seen there. You know, takes only a matter of seconds, really.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the actual content itself is kind of, you know, 1080 by 1920 in this case, so you can just kind of assume where everything would be based on that resolution. So obviously I know this is specifically there because we've kind of measured that out. What I'll do now is if we go back to the first page, obviously we've made this button, but it doesn't actually do anything at the moment. So if we choose this button, jump to a scene, keep it as default, select the target. Oh, actually, one thing I forgot to do. This is why I would recommend giving them a name, just for reference and stuff like that. So I think I spelled that wrong. Oh well. If I choose that one, you can see it gives me the option to choose that one there. So press OK, and you can see how, like, you know, when I press this button now in the future, it's actually going to go to that page. But the problem with this page is I don't actually have a way back to the home page right now. So it's kind of like a one-way system. So if I just press the preview here, press the discover button, it's going to go to this page here, right? But I don't have any other way to go back. I also haven't, you know, assigned this to do anything at the moment. So I'm kind of just stuck here, right? So it's always good to make sure when you are designing this, just to kind of add ways to just kind of navigate through the system itself. Tom was saying earlier that it's good to just like understand what you're going to do beforehand, like making like a roadmap or something, and then kind of implement that as you go along, I guess. But if I add another button here, and then we'll add it to this area, obviously we've designed it in a way where, you know, this is clearly, you know, it's obvious what this actually does to the user. Targets, homepage, and then obviously when we click that, it's going to go back to the homepage. So we have like a two-way system now of kind of going through this touch playlist. So, you know, for some people, they might only need like two buttons to kind of do what they need to do. But, you know, in this case, we actually want, you know, to do more things. So if I go to the second button here, I actually have action jump to a scene again, but I want to change this to open to a website. So I won't copy the website in because I'll need to go back to the other playlist. But essentially, whatever website URL you can put into this area, so you can literally just copy the actual URL itself, put it directly into this area, and that's gonna, you know, it's gonna actually show up on the screen. And that will be like the full screen one where it had like the cross in like the top right corner. So that's pretty much how that one works. And also what we have is, you notice with a Tetris thing as well, you can actually add an application. So this can be pretty much anything, at least that we've, there could be issues with some apps that we haven't tested, but for general purposes, it's good to the idea that you can actually add like an application to the touch playlist. Obviously for our one, we've just chose open in an Android app. And then what we've actually done is we've taken the APK itself. So I've taken Tetris. I think I took it from like Pure website or something like that. But essentially I can actually add that application to there. And when we publish this to the screen itself, the screen will then realize that it needs to download that application, and it's going to do that for you automatically. So it'll actually be installed on the screen, like on the underside, on the Android side. And then when you press the button, it's going to be like, ready to open that application. You'll also notice that it does automatically add like an Android icon here, just so you know what it is. But if you just kind of click on it and then press OK, it just go back to whatever you want it to be. So just the more obvious of what it actually is.
Just on that, so what Dean was saying in terms of the APK, obviously you'll need the APK, which is the Android application installation file. The same way for like a Windows application would be .exe. So you'll need that APK file, which you'll then upload in the same way you'd upload and send an image or a video. You upload, and by assigning that here, when you publish it to the screen, it also publishes, essentially sends the APK file to the screen as well, which installs in the background on the Android operating system. And then, as you've seen earlier when I demonstrated it with my amazing Tetris skills, you'll see that obviously you can then use the application. It'll be installed on the Android side, but you're never actually exiting our app or exiting the touch playlist itself.
Yeah, just to add to that, you can see there's actually a format where you can upload the APK.
Yeah, so if you just want to upload the APK file itself, you can just do that.
I didn't give it a name, but I know that one's Tetris. But that's kind of how it would work. So as soon as you uploaded this APK, you can just kind of do whatever you want with it. So if we go back to the touch playlist, it would have been this one here. Just to add to that as well, obviously, every time you make any changes and such, you can just save them and just go back to them. Even if you need to change something in the future, like you never need to kind of start all over again. You just come back and change what you need to change. So essentially, that's the home page, right? We also have the second page, but we haven't assigned this button to do anything yet. So if we create another page or another scene, we'll add another background image, and we have another one that we created here, which was this one with the dinosaur. So if I choose this one, what we have is just completely sort of, it's missing some content here, and there's also like buttons and such that we haven't added. You'll notice the background's blurred, as Thomas was speaking about earlier. The whole purpose of this is for user behavior, right? Where like, if the background's blurred, you would assume that if you touch that area, it will actually go back to the previous page. It just makes sense. And also obviously the last page on there, which is this one, it makes sense. Like this is kind of more of a like a pop out, right? Instead of an actual thing itself. Maybe the connection's a little bit unstable. I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're okay now.
I think we're good. Anyway, so what we could do on this page is, first of all, let's rename it first, just so we know which one of this one is. So I'll just call this one like dinosaur or something. Hopefully I'll spell this one right this time. There we go. Cool. So we call that one dinosaur. Jump to a scene, targets. Now we've got the dinosaur one here. So we choose that one. Again, now we know that button's going to go to this page. And once again, how do we exit out of this page without, buttons already on there? So if we just go and actually start adding buttons like this, and this is a really cool way of kind of, as I mentioned, giving people the way to sort of exit this this page or this scene itself, just in terms of usability and stuff. So if I just add all like these buttons.
So even though we've got essentially, doesn't matter, essentially do the same thing. So user interface, but in terms of user behavior, if you just touch there, it's just still going to go back as well. That's what you expect, as a user, that's what you'd expect to happen. So you always need to kind of try and keep that in mind when you put in the content together.
Yeah, exactly. You can see kind of how nice it does kind of add to it, because it does look like this is popping out onto the page. It just kind of goes, further than it would otherwise. Cool, right, just where I was. The only thing I just added to that was I've just added a new button. And essentially I'm just going to add this button to this area. And we're going to show you what this does instead. You don't have to be precise as I am, because in general, you know, as long as the user clicks somewhere around there, it's going to do the thing, right? So what we can do this time is, just like we did before, I'm just going to add this here. Should load up soonish. There we go. So if I add this image here, for example, all this video zone at the moment is doing is just simply just a static image. It's not really doing anything, but we can make this video zone do other things as well. So in that case, we can actually make it like play different images, or we can make it play videos. Obviously, it's a video zone. So one of the other options in the action section is if we go to action, and then it is play content in a zone. Obviously, by how it's titled, it means that whatever zone you pick, so in this case, this one, it's going to play something else in that zone when what we choose it to be. So first of all, you need to pick that zone that you want it to change, that you want to change. So target, it's asking me like, where's the scene of that zone? Obviously, it's this one. I haven't actually named the zone, but you'll notice how you can actually name every single element just to make it easier. You might not want to name every single thing, but it might be useful. Like if this is a button that plays a certain video, maybe you want to call that like play video one or something. Just so you have your reference, especially if you come back to it in the future and maybe you just kind of forgot what everything does. But you can see at the bottom of this one, just underneath button image, this action's actually added an extra option called play media. So if I choose this, and then what we'll do is if we go to our videos, so I think we're having network issues. Wait for it to load now. In our video folder here, we actually have the two videos that we showed the screen behind us. So we're just going to choose the first one here. And what that'll do is when we touch that button, it's actually going to play the media. So, action, play content in the zone. So what that means is action, play content in this zone, this specific zone here, and then play this media. So as soon as we touch that button, it's going to play that media essentially. So, it's also a pretty useful tool for sure for like, displaying different kinds of content.
Basically, if you want to have an image gallery, on one single page, you probably don't need to do the other one, to be honest, Dean. You basically just replicate the same thing for as many times as you want. You could have 20 different buttons that launch 20 different videos all on the same page.
Yeah, and then what I'll do now is if I add one more button here, and this one will be the one that goes to a new scene, and we'll call this the gallery scene. We also have one that goes to the website. So we'll just do this one first. So if I add a new scene, again, we'll just use a background because we've already designed them. So I think for this one, it is this one here. So what we can do in this area is if we add another video zone, what we can actually do is we can select and put multiple images in that in zone itself. So typically, when this is published to the screen, it's going to cycle through each one of them, like 10 seconds, etc., until it kind of goes back to the start and just kind of keeps going around. But there's actually another option that not a lot of people do know about, where you can actually image to play instead. So that comes right here that says property editing. So if I make this on demand instead of live, what it's actually to choose when I publish this to play, allow me to pick each different image as Tom showed you earlier, instead of just going through them on a loop. So that's quite useful for that. And you can see there's actually multiple different options you can change of kind of how it looks and stuff. So at the moment, we just have it at the bottom. Obviously, it's a little bit small, so maybe we want to make the thumbnail a bit bigger. But something like that, right? You could just kind of play around with it until you get it right. There we go. So that's kind of how that one works, right? And then if we go to add another scene, we'll add wait for it. There we go. So backgrounds. Oops, didn't put that one. Unfortunate. That's what happens with connection issues, I guess. Let's try again. Oh, it's loaded. Almost. There we go. Cool. Well, we'll have the same background here. And all we're going to do on this one is, instead of adding the actual video zone like we did with this one, we're actually going to add a website zone instead. So similar to what we did with a button, you could put whatever URL you want into this area, and it's going to pretty much display specifically in that actual zone itself. And just to add to this as well, the duration here is how long you want the website to last for before either it refreshes, which is typically what most people use it for. So that's like, you know, for example, if it was like a stock market, you might last like for a minute, like refresh every minute, you know, just to make it kind of quicker, you know, to see what's actually changing. But you could also just make it last for the full duration, and that will pretty much be how long the playlist kind of lasts for, which is what you'll typically see on a non-touch playlist when you want to like put multiple playlists on at the same time. So if we add that to that area, obviously whatever website we put onto this page here is actually going to show, which again, you saw what behind us in particular. Yeah, that one.
So guys, while Dean starts adding the other buttons around here to go back, one advantage of doing it this way, obviously it gives you more control about how the web page looks. Having like a back, and I've pressed the cross instead, that's going to then take me back an extra level. So just gives you more flexibility in terms of the navigation, which you mentioned at the start. So just to summarize again, there's two separate ways of launching a web page. One is full screen, where you've just got a cross in the top right hand corner, which when you click, it just goes back one level. By doing it this way, you've got that extra flexibility. So you can go back one level, or you can, you know, go back an extra level.
Exactly. So if I just rename this one, so this one will be called gallery, for example. Oops, spelled it wrong again. And then we also have the website one. So just to clarify, I would recommend renaming these because it'll make it easy for you guys to understand what they actually do when you are putting buttons on them. Otherwise, it might get a bit messy. But, you know, obviously I know this button needs to go to the gallery. So that one there. Otherwise, it would be like scene 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like, you got to remember what each of them does. So it's definitely not that easy when you do that way. But yeah, if we just add this, add the target website for this one. And then pretty much we've kind of, you know, added what we need to add. Obviously with this one, we need to also add the buttons around the edge. But you'll notice we actually did add a back button here, as Thomas said. So you can see I've added the button around everything else, except for this particular part here where I've got like a solo one, I guess, where with this one, I actually want this to go back to the original page, which was like the dinosaur one, whilst maybe the other ones actually go back to this page here. So if I choose this one, you know, dinosaur, and then obviously all the rest of the buttons would then go back to discover, if that makes sense. Is there anything else that we need to add to this?
No, I mean, again, there's a few extra buttons and stuff that are missing. Obviously, Dean can kind of build those in the background, but I think we've pretty much covered it from scratch. Obviously, we showed you what it looked like in the finished result. We showed you obviously what it looked like in the back end complete, which is obviously pretty much where we've got up to now with the demonstration. Then obviously we've kind of built it from scratch just to show you each element. I think once you kind of understand, you know, what the CMS can do, and like I said earlier, the kind of, as well as the functions, what the limitations are, you can find ways around those limitations. Essentially, anything is possible. We've done some playlists previously for ISE, for example, where we did everything. Every page is like a separate video, so we're all just using video content. So every page is moving and has got, you know, an extra dynamic element. So, you know, really, there are no limits. Once you understand, you know, the limitations of the CMS and the functionality and how easy it is to use, it's literally just a case of finding a ways around those limitations, really. Once Dean's finished linking these buttons, as you can see, Dean's obviously done this before. So once you've started, once you've started using it in terms of linking things up, it shouldn't take really that long. I think when Dean kind of practiced this yesterday, it took about 20 minutes just to put the whole thing together. Obviously we've taken a little bit longer today just to kind of explain everything. But once you're familiar with the interface, it shouldn't take that long at all, really. The only thing that we haven't covered, which Dean will cover next, is the ability to add a screensaver. So when as you probably noticed in the screen in the background here, if the screen isn't interacted with for a given period, you can set it to either go back to the home page or launch a screensaver, which I'll let Dean take back over for that.
Yeah, pretty much. So if I just save this now, and we'll just leave this as it is. So, in terms of, like I said, every time you need to, make changes and stuff, just open up the touch playlist and just save what you need to save. I'm pretty sure I'm done with everything here, at least that I can remember. The only other thing to talk about then is the timeout function here. So we actually added this recently. It did used to be on the old CMS, but we've kind of improved it a little bit because it wasn't that, user-friendly, I guess. But on this one, you just click the timeout function and you actually get that down here. It's just similar to the old CMS, how it works, though. You can set whatever timeout you need it to be. So by that, I mean, after a certain period of time, so in this case, 5 minutes, it's going to do an action. At the moment, it just says no action. But you can actually assign 2 different actions for it to do. So the first one is go to home scene. So what that means is whatever your home page is, and you can see it's always the one that's bracketed. The first one we made, pretty much. It's going to go back. It's going to go to that one. And then also the second option is launch screensaver. So this allows you to publish a touch playlist timeout duration. So what you're going to do for this one. So if I save this, saved in a second, just it will come up. Green when it is saved, but I think it's because we already saved it earlier. So if I go to program playlist, you can see I've already got one here. There you go. It finally saved. I've already got one here. But if we just remember how to do this from the beginning, so rapids, choose the orientation. So portrait for us. Press next. Double left click anywhere on the video zone. Obviously find the video that you need to publish. I see the internet's going a lot better now. That's good to see. So you choose that one. Obviously, I've already uploaded it earlier. Press OK. It's filter screen. This is designed in the way that we want it to show. Press next at the top. And then, of course, you just publish to whichever screen you need to publish to. Obviously, we already have it on the one behind us, but similar to how you do it on the non-touch version. It's just the same thing. So, with this one, we've literally just assigned it as like a non-touch playlist. And just to get more information on this, if we go to player, and then if we go to the actual screen, click on the screen name here, I think it keeps trying to save it over and over because we clicked a few too many times. Oops. But you can see at the top, it says playlist and also touch playlist. So you can see how we actually have 2 playlists on the screen, but they don't overwrite each other. So we have like the one that's the non-touch playlist as a screensaver, which you can also know. So because they're like if I just adds to it, you don't even need to press like additional schedule or anything like that. You just publish like a separate entity. Makes any sense?
So yeah, essentially the touch playlist is kind of always playing underneath, and then the non-touch playlist is playing on top when it's interacted with. And then obviously you can start interacting with the touch playlist. In the same way you can schedule things with non-touch playlists and non-touch screens, you can also, obviously you've got full scheduling ability as well to schedule things with your screensaver as well. So Dean, unless you've got anything else, I think that pretty much covers everything.
I think so.
Yeah. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen, guys. What I'm going to do now, guys, I'm going to open it up to someone's got any questions or wants us to go over anything again in any more detail, or wants to find out any other information. Now's your chance. You can yourself or use the chat box. We've even got just to give a quick shout out. We've got the guy who actually designed this content, who a lot of you will be familiar with, Tom Rock. He's on the call today. So if anyone's got any questions about the content creation in Photoshop or anything content related, I'm sure Rock would be thrilled to answer anyone's question. So yeah, feel free. I think Amy has a question. Okay. Okay.
Guys, hi guys.
Mobile. Oh, hi, Eamon. Yeah,
hi,
have you got a question, Eamon?
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just maybe I missed something here. But if Dean, when you go back to the home page that you created, you put a video at the top of the page, and then you put a PNG file, I think, below. But behind the PNG file, you created a large touch zone. And then you put the PNG, and then you had 3 touch zones on top of that. I don't understand why you put the larger touch zone behind the static file.
Rock, would you mind to quickly explain that, help Eamon to explain why we need to add that big button?
Hi there. Yeah, I can try and help step in while Tom and Dean. Oh, are they coming back now? 1 second. I'm not sure where they got to really, because the connection was quite bad for me. Are they coming back in? Well, I think just why they were adding, they needed to add a button zone to add the PNG to get the transparency. No problem. That's why I think they were doing that. And then you can add the buttons on top. So the button can also, it's kind of got 2 functions, I think. The button zone can also be a button in one sense and also a transparent zone in another sense. It's got 2 functions, really, the button zone. Tom and Dean back now. Can I hand back over to them?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks for that, Rock. Really appreciate that. So yeah, essentially, Eamon, as Rock kind of explained, you've got the different layers. You've got the video zone, and then on top of that, you've got this button zone that doesn't have any interactivity. That's literally there just to have that PNG. And then on top of that, you've got these other button zones over the PNG, which have the interactivity to link to the different pages. Does that explain it better, Eamon? Do you understand a little bit better now?
Yeah, sure. I understand. So it's just for the transparency, really. It's the 3 buttons that are on top of the PNG that are really doing the functioning there. Yeah.
Exactly. As Tom Rock said, the button zone kind of doubles up in terms of functionality. Obviously, it can have interactivity, but it also doubles up as a transparent zone.
Yeah. No, that's fine. Thanks. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Thanks,
Eamon. Appreciate that. On the chat, Mobile has asked, do you have a grid or rulers? That is something I think we're currently working on at the moment, isn't it, Dean?
Yes, we do want to add like a grid kind of function. We don't know exactly how it will work at the moment, because we would like to be able to snap things to the grid, which requires a lot more development than it would be just to add like a grid. But it might be possible just to quickly add like a grid as like a transparent image.
Yeah.
Just for just for now, I guess. That's something that we've looked at too.
So that's a good workaround. So yeah, if you wanted to have that grid in place now, obviously it can be added temporarily as a separate zone. But it is a feature that we are working on at the moment. Mobile's also asked, can you have a print button which would print a file PDF image? Can you have an email button, send an email to someone? So basically they would, in terms of print, would that mean kind of integrating it with a third-party printer? Is that, I think that's probably what that means. In terms of an email, yeah, I mean, absolutely. That would just be done through the web zone. So you just kind of, in the same way as if you wanted like for example, like data capture, if you wanted like a data entry form or something like that, then you just create that as a web page and either have it like we showed as a full screen web zone or as a, you know, a web zone within a page. You know, and have it that way. And that would obviously pop up with an on-screen keyboard as well, using the Android operating system. So yeah, email, yes. I'm not sure about the question for printing. I think that means maybe as
Bacon, can I step in to explain? I
Absolutely.
think that is for content creation collaborating question. So when you decide something, you may want other people to approve that. So that's the reason probably you need a set to print as PDF, or you send this template to somebody else to approve. I think that's the reason. So on that question, I can answer that. Best way to do is you can set up login for your collaborator. You let them just review everything, log in to review. That's the best way to do that.
Yeah,
so you, as an administrator, you can set up another account for somebody else just to look at everything what you have done.
Yeah, just to expand on Bolly's point a little bit there, if that is what you're looking to achieve, so you can also set different roles with different privileges. So if you wanted to set up like an authorization or just a check-in account, you could set one up so all they can do is log in and look at the content. They can't edit it, they can't change it, they can't publish it, they don't have access to any of the screens, any of the media. How you want to kind of structure that is entirely up to you, really. But that would be the best way of doing that for sure. Obviously, another way, more simple, I suppose, is just taking a screenshot, really. But yeah, that would be the easiest way. Yes. Yes, Kieran. The answer to that quick one, yes. Can you open an on-screen keyboard in WebView? You can. We don't have any. I don't think there's anything to type. Maybe I'll have a look. We may be able to demonstrate that on here.
Like a search box, maybe. Typically, if there's some kind of like search feature or...
Here we go. So I found a data entry form on the website here. Once as you can see there, you may not be able to see, but it just pops up with an on-screen keyboard just there at the bottom. So any kind of data entry, obviously it would pop up with the Android keyboard. No problem at all, Kieran. When 4K touchscreens are in the range, we'll be able to make 4K touch templates on the CMS. Yes, that's correct. I mean, to be honest, Kieran, in terms of when it comes to 4K, the 4K question, it's something I think that some end users ask, because obviously at home they've got a 4K television. In terms of actual 4K content, it's still very hard to come by, very expensive. So the market demand isn't really that high for 4K at the moment. So although we don't really have a 4K touchscreen for the CMS in development, we do have a range of our WP range, open frame touch monitors. They've actually got 4K capability. So again, if your customer requested a 4K touchscreen, we have hardware that can support that. In terms of the CMS, as you say, if we have the hardware that can support it, Kieran, we will be able to support it on the CMS, yes, at that point. Another question, what is the max file size for images, videos? That's a good question. There's a limitation of a single file size not being able to be bigger than 1 gigabyte. But if you imagine, a full HD video that's a gigabyte is probably an hour, maybe 2 hours long. So it's not really a huge limitation. If you do find, or if your customers find that they've got a file that's bigger than a gigabyte, we can always help you to reformat that and make it a little bit more efficiently coded. Okay, guys, some really good questions there. Really appreciate that. Before we close today's session, was there any other questions that anyone wanted to unmute themselves and ask, or just ask on the chat? No? Okay then, guys. In that case, obviously, if there are any other questions that you think of, please feel free to obviously contact your account manager, get in touch with us. There's some contact details on screen just here. The email address that comes through to myself, Dean, and the marketing team, so we can answer any of those questions. Obviously, we've got the EU and UK office numbers there as well. So yeah, feel free to reach out to us or obviously your dedicated account manager. We're more than happy to help. Thanks, guys. Just everyone, a few people saying thanks on chat. So yeah, no problem at all.
Sorry for the network issues.
It's a pleasure. Yeah, as Dean said, we had a few network problems, but hopefully it didn't stunt things too badly. But yeah, as Dean said, these things happen sometimes, but not to worry. Okay, guys. Yeah, if there's no other questions, we're going to close today's session. But thanks everyone for attending. We all hope you learned something and able to kind of take your customers' content to the next level. Okay, thanks, guys. Everyone, have a good day. Take care, everyone. Thanks, Andy. Take care.